First one is update on Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Bakhmut update. Bakhmut has become a new Stalingrad of this war. This is a city of logistics and strategic importance, and it has turned into a meat grinder. Russia has encircled Bakhmut after nearly a year of bloodiest battle in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, just like Stalingrad, and could be a turning point of the conflict, just like Stalingrad. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has acknowledged that Bakhmut will fall into Russian hands in coming days. He also said that its capture by the Russian military won't necessarily reflect any turning point of war. Translation: it probably is a turning point of the war. Russia fired dozens of missiles at Kiev and other regions across Ukraine overnight, striking civilian infrastructure. This is recent. Striking civilian infrastructure and the country's defense industry is in one of the biggest barrages this year, as its forces continue to claw more territory in the east. General Valery Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, said that Russia had launched 81 missiles of different varieties from air, land and sea, in addition to 8 Iranian attack drones. 4 of the drones and 34 cruise missiles were intercepted. General Zaluzhny said, missiles hit western Ukraine as far as Lviv, which is rare. Now, 40% of Kiev population is without heating. Kharkiv is now without power, water or heating. It has come to my understanding that there are about 60,000 Ukrainian troops that are training in the NATO territory for the upcoming Russian offensive. They're preparing for Russia's 300,000 to 500,000 troops that were supposed to come into the battlefield in the winter last year. But winter wasn't as harsh last year as usual. Without the ground freeze, they would have suffered logistics issues. So that offensive will probably come in spring. It is now called the spring offensive. Also, there are a few thousand US soldiers in Eastern Europe, along with Polish soldiers undergoing training. So the fighting between Russian mobilization with Ukrainian and NATO soldiers in Ukrainian uniform will happen in spring, or it probably will happen in spring. This can escalate big. Putin, being a dictator, must win to appear strong and competent. Otherwise, he'll be overthrown or killed. Biden, after Afghanistan humiliation, will not want to back down as election season in US will begin soon. Also, understand there was a war between continental Europe and Russia in 19th century after Napoleon became master of Europe. There was a war between continental Europe and Russia in 20th century with Hitler's invasion of Soviet Union. Now in 21st century, continental Europe and Russia are extremely close to a war. Russia has won the last 2 wars, but at a huge cost to Russia. There are major differences in the last 2 and in this one if it escalates. Here are the issues that will affect Russia negatively. First, the biggest global power in last 2 wars, Britain, was on Russia's side against Napoleon and Hitler. This time, the biggest global power, USA, will be the one waging war on Russia with continental Europe. Second, Russian Federation lacks the manpower to match NATO, unlike Tsarist Russia or Soviet Union. Russia has one of the biggest demographics crises after the collapse of Soviet Union. It lacks young people. Here are the issues that will negatively affect NATO if this escalates into a war. First, NATO needs to set up the logistics of the war. It needs to move weapons, soldiers and supplies near Ukrainian borders. This normally takes months. Do they have that time to set up the logistics before the upcoming Russian offensive? Now, they have many NATO soldiers stationed in Poland and Romania. NATO weapons to Ukraine are coming to Western Ukraine from Poland. But will that be enough for a war between NATO and Russia? Second, NATO's ammunition problem. This is related to the first problem for NATO. Ukraine gets its ammunition from NATO. Reports on the ground and rumors on the internet tell me that Ukraine is firing less than 10,000 ammo per day, possibly less than 5,000 ammo a day, while Russia is firing over 20,000 ammo a day. This is either a day or a week. I don't remember which one. I think it is day. NATO has to move into war economy to get its production up as soon as possible to surpass Russia, to ensure victory, which takes weeks, if not months, the war economy transition. Third, NATO's public is largely disinterested in war. Poland and Romania might be the exception. It's the elites in the NATO, particularly in Washington, that want a war with Russia. Now, this is a disadvantage and advantage to both NATO and Russia. They have nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles. If the nuclear war starts, or the war between continental Europe and Russia, then Russia, Europe and North America gets destroyed. Not to mention the environmental disaster that will affect the rest of the entire world. But this is all hypothetical, I hope. Right now, all things considered, Russia has the upper hand over Ukraine. It will be up to Ukraine and NATO to decide how to respond to the upcoming Russian offensive. Let Ukraine fall and get humiliated and potentially fall of NATO, or NATO enters and escalates the war against Russia, which will probably end up in the nuclear war.